Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. Let me tell you a story she never thought I'd have the guts to tell. She left on a Thursday. The house was quiet. Too quiet. You know, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like your soul packed up and left before you did? That's what I felt, standing in the hallway, staring at the slice of light still glowing from her closet. One hanger dangled like it missed its dress. I stood there holding her stupid self-care weekend itinerary she'd accidentally left behind. It had little flowers on it and a yoga symbol, but I knew what it really was. A cover story. A performance. A lie dressed up in lavender-scented ink. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. Instead, I walked into our bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed she hadn't touched in 4 nights, and started unplugging my phone charger. That was the first item I packed. You see, she was halfway to some beach house with her so-called girls when I realized something earth-shattering. I was the only one still trying. I had begged for her time. She gave it to Instagram. I had asked for her honesty. She gave me sarcasm. I had given her my loyalty. She gave him everything else. Oh, don't worry, we'll get to him. But first, let's rewind just a little. 2 weeks earlier, I heard laughter coming from the guest bathroom. She didn't know I was home yet. I paused in the hallway. She was on speakerphone. Her voice, so light, so alive. I hadn't heard it like that in months. Maybe years. Babe, she giggled. He wouldn't know passion if it smacked him in the face with a candlelit dinner. Then silence. A low male chuckle on the other end. I didn't move. Didn't even breathe. I waited until she ended the call. Then I walked in and asked if she wanted to order Thai or Mexican for dinner. She said, without even looking up, I already ate. That was the moment I stopped being her husband and became her roommate with Wi-Fi. So yeah, when she packed her beach bag full of lies and slipped into that red bikini just for the spa, I finally did something she didn't see coming. I moved out. Quietly. Carefully. While she was sipping smoothies in another man's hoodie, I was boxing up 10 years of pretending not to notice. But I didn't just leave. No, I left something behind. Something she'll never forget. And when she walked through that front door 3 days later and found it, let's just say, silence never screamed louder. I didn't sleep much the night after she left. Not because I missed her. I'd spent months lying beside her and feeling lonelier than I ever had in my life. No, I stayed awake because for the first time in years, I was making a decision that wasn't based on hoping she'd change. I was done hoping. Hope had become a prison. I started small. I made a list of everything I needed to take. Passport, social security card, laptop, a few favorite shirts, my grandfather's watch. The one thing of value that hadn't been replaced by her sleek minimalist decor. I stood in our kitchen, still decorated in that sterile modern chic she liked so much, and thought about how ridiculous it was that the man who paid for most of it barely had a say in it. We used to have color in this house. Now, everything was white, gray, and cold, just like the way she'd been treating me. I pulled out my duffel bag and started packing. Methodical. Calm. There was no panic, no rush. She wouldn't be back until Monday. I had time. But you know what? I didn't want to take everything. I didn't need everything. I only wanted what still felt like mine. And surprisingly, that wasn't much. But what I really focused on was what I would leave behind. There was a letter, not a goodbye letter. No, that felt too cliché. This was more like a mirror. I wrote down everything I had swallowed for the last 3 years. Every silent night. Every dismissed compliment. Every holiday ruined by her moods. Every flirtatious comment she made in front of me and laughed off like I was being too sensitive. I filled the pages with the truth, not dramatic or cruel, just raw and undeniable. And at the end, I added a photo. It wasn't of us. It was a photo I found on her old tablet months ago and had emailed to myself without her knowing. Her, on a couch that wasn't ours, wearing a hoodie I'd never seen, her lips against someone else's cheek. It wasn't explicit. It didn't need to be. The intimacy was obvious. She'd never admitted it. But I didn't need her confession anymore. I had something better, my clarity. Before I zipped up the bag, I stood in our shared closet one last time. I looked at her dresses, her shoes, the ones I'd stood in line to buy on her birthday. The ones she wore to dinners where she'd scroll her phone under the table while I tried to make conversation. And then, something wild hit me. I wasn't even angry. I was exhausted. So I walked out, locked the door behind me, left the key on the kitchen island next to the letter and the photo, underneath a single sticky note that said, Read this before you pretend to miss me. I checked into a cheap extended stay place on the edge of town. It wasn't glamorous, but the sheets were clean, the air smelled like fresh coffee instead of sandalwood candles, and nobody sighed when I walked into the room. 2 days passed. Radio silence. Then, she texted me. Where are you? Are you okay? Did something happen? Not I miss you. Not come back. Just confusion, like she was the one who'd been abandoned. I didn't reply. Not yet. Because what came next? That's when things really got messy. You see, she didn't go on that girl's trip alone. And thanks to a friend of a friend, someone I didn't even know had my back, I was about to find out exactly who she was with. Trust me, you're going to want to hear what she said when she saw my letter. Because it wasn't tears. It wasn't regret. It was something worse. She didn't even finish reading the letter. That's what her third message said, 2 hours after the first. I couldn't even finish reading it. What is this, Harland? Are you trying to humiliate me? She skipped over the part where I poured out my soul. Skipped the part where I listed every instance she dismissed me like I was just a passing breeze in her busy, glamorous day. Skipped the part where I wrote about how she used to hold my hand in the car, and now I had to beg for a text reply. No, what got to her was the photo. The moment she realized someone saw her in his hoodie. The moment she realized I wasn't just guessing anymore. And you know what? That's exactly what I wanted. See, I didn't move out to punish her. I didn't do it to be dramatic or to teach her some twisted lesson. I did it because I was finally tired of being invisible. Because somewhere along the way, my silence turned into complicity, and I was done helping her pretend we were still okay. That friend of a friend I mentioned? His name's Colby. We weren't close. Just two guys who ended up sitting next to each other at a cookout, once while our wives got wine drunk and pretended to like each other. We exchanged numbers after bonding over how bad we both were at assembling IKEA furniture. I hadn't spoken to him in months, until he texted me out of nowhere. Hey man, don't know if this is something you'd want to hear, but I saw Kendra last night. Not where she said she'd be. I froze. My first instinct was to ignore it. I didn't want more pain. But curiosity is cruel, and part of me still needed to know I wasn't crazy. So I replied, where was she? His next message? A photo. Kendra. At a rooftop bar. Hair curled. Wearing that red dress she told me she returned weeks ago. Standing shoulder to shoulder with a tall guy in a tight navy shirt and an arm just a little too familiar around her waist. I didn't recognize the guy, but I didn't have to. Colby said, that's Dane. He's a gym friend of hers. Pretty sure he's not married. Funny, huh? She told me once that she hated guys who flexed on Instagram. Dane's entire profile looked like a protein shake exploded. And then, the puzzle pieces fell into place. The late nights at the gym. The mysterious phone calls from work. The way she came home giddy and distracted, like she was still buzzing from someone else's attention. It wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't a mistake. She had built a second life without me. And still, she had the audacity to write. We were having problems, Harland. You're not blameless here. No, I wasn't. I let it go on this long. That's on me. But I wasn't the one sneaking out behind lies and filtered captions. Here's the thing though, I didn't respond. I didn't blow up her phone. I didn't threaten. I didn't beg. I let her sit with it. Because I had a plan. And part of that plan was already unfolding. While she was stuck in a spiral of panic, trying to guess how many people knew, I was quietly shifting everything behind the scenes. The lease? I had my name removed. My bank account. Unlinked. The family Netflix account she used to binge while too tired to talk? I changed the password and renamed the profile. Asked Dane. Petty? Yeah, but I'd swallowed years of hurt in silence. I figured I earned a small win. The best part? She didn't even know where I was. That drove her crazy. Not because she missed me, but because she couldn't control the narrative. For once, she wasn't the one leaving. I was. And that wasn't part of her plan. What happened next? Let's just say Kendra finally called me. And the words she said were nothing like I expected. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She offered me a deal. And it was worse than I could have imagined. The phone didn't even ring twice before I picked it up. I wasn't planning to. I told myself I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. But I guess part of me still wanted to hear her voice. Not because I missed it, but because I needed to finally hear what she sounded like when she realized I wasn't playing the fool anymore. Kendra, I said, my voice low, steady. There was a pause on the other end. A shallow breath. And then she spoke. And what came out wasn't shock, wasn't regret. It was strategy. We don't have to make this ugly, she said. That's how she opened. Not where are you? Not can we talk? Just business. Like we were negotiating a lease break or a gym membership cancellation. Her tone was clipped, deliberate, and if I didn't know her better, I would have thought she was calm. But I could hear it, the tightness in her throat, the way her voice fought not to shake. Oh, I replied. Are we pretending it was beautiful before? She ignored that. I just think there's a way we can walk away from this without ruining each other's lives, she said, like she hadn't already torn mine into pieces one lunch date at a time. I stayed quiet. I let the silence grow uncomfortable. Kendra hated silence. She always filled it with noise, background music, passive-aggressive comments, phone calls to people she barely liked. Silence meant confrontation, and she avoided that like the plague. Then came her pitch, her deal, as she called it. If you're not planning to come back, that's fine. But there's no reason we have to go nuclear. I can stay in the house until the lease ends. We don't tell our families what happened. No messy stories. We both move on quietly. Dignified. Civil. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was this involuntary, cracked laugh that came out more like a cough. Because that was it. That was her damage control plan. Sweep everything under the rug and go our separate ways like this was just an expired subscription. Kendra, I said, you're talking about our marriage like it's a group project we're wrapping up for a C- grade. And then came the part that still makes my stomach turn. She sighed, not the emotional kind, the annoyed kind. And she said, look, Harland, you and I both know it hasn't been working for a long time. I tried. You stayed. But that's not the same thing. It's not my fault if I needed something you couldn't give. Something I couldn't give? I was at every doctor's appointment when she had that panic attack in year 2. I drove her mother to chemo. I stayed up nights learning to cook meals without dairy because she went plant-based for clarity. I listened, adapted, and bent myself into 100 versions of a man she could love. And still, I was just a placeholder until she found someone shinier. You needed honesty, I told her. And I couldn't even get that from you. She didn't answer right away. But her silence this time wasn't discomfort. It was dismissal. I'm not doing this, Harland, she finally said. If you want to make this some dramatic story you tell your buddies, go ahead. But I'm done feeling bad for someone who gave up on himself long before I ever gave up on us. That one stung. Because maybe, in some small way, it was true. I had given up on myself. I stopped pushing back. I stopped asking for affection. I accepted the quiet, the coldness, the loneliness, because somewhere deep inside, I believed I didn't deserve more. But now I knew better. I didn't say goodbye. I just hung up. And I sat there, staring at the ceiling in that dingy motel room with its humming mini fridge and flickering light bulb. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was less than. I felt angry, not bitter, not vengeful, but awake. And in that moment, I decided something. If Kendra wanted to keep pretending this was mutual, fine. But she didn't get to control the story. Not anymore. Because there was one more thing I hadn't told her, something she would have never expected. I knew exactly who Dane was. And I wasn't the only one watching. Dane wasn't just some random gym guy. I wish he had been. That would have made this story easier to digest. But no, life doesn't hand you clean, easy betrayals. It twists the knife slowly, in ways you don't expect. I knew him. Not closely, but enough. He was the guy who helped me change a tire outside a CVS last year. The guy who laughed too loudly at my joke during the community barbecue. The guy who shook my hand with both of his like he respected me. He looked me in the eyes, smiled like a buddy, and said, "You've got a great one, man. You're lucky." And the whole time, he was probably thinking, "I'll be texting her the second you leave." That realization hit me like a second betrayal layered over the first. I didn't just lose my wife. I lost my dignity in front of a man who watched me unravel from a distance, knowing he was part of it. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was that someone else knew before I did. That someone, and this will sound insane, was my landlord. His name's Walt. He's in his 60s, a little hard of hearing, always wears flannel even in summer. We weren't close. Just casual chats when paying rent or trimming the hedges. But after I moved out and officially ended the lease, I got a call from him. Thought it was about paperwork. "No," Walt said. "I didn't want to get involved, Harland. I really didn't. But you're a decent guy, and I saw some things that didn't sit right with me." He paused, clearly nervous, then said, "I saw your wife bring someone to the house. A few times. Never you. I asked him when. He said, every other Friday. For months. That was the day Kendra always claimed to have after-hours meetings. I'd believed her. I'd even offered to meal prep for her, so she wouldn't be too tired when she got home. Meanwhile, Walt had seen them, her and Dane, walking into my house like it was a hotel suite. Laughing, holding hands once. And one time, kissing at the door. And Walt? He never said a word until now. People's marriages are messy, he said. I thought maybe you two had an arrangement. Or maybe you didn't want to know. That last part stayed with me. Maybe you didn't want to know. And maybe, for a while, that was true. Maybe deep down I sensed something was off and chose the comfort of pretending instead of the agony of knowing. But now I knew, and I couldn't unknow it. I thanked Walt. Told him I appreciated the honesty. Hung up. Then I sat in that motel room with the lights off and thought about every Friday night I spent waiting. Every cold dinner. Every unanswered text. Every love you. I set out of habit that was returned with a distracted hum. It was time. I logged onto her iPad. The one she never bothered to log out of before leaving. She didn't think I knew the passcode. But I did. It was still the date of our wedding anniversary. A cruel little irony, considering how fast she'd rewritten our vows in real life. Messages, emails, photos. Everything I needed was right there. And one email thread stood out like a siren. Subject, you free next Friday? I'll make sure he's not around. I didn't open the attachments. I didn't need to. I'd already seen enough. But I did take screenshots. All of them. Not for revenge. Not for social media. Just for reality. Because when someone gaslights you long enough, you start questioning if your pain is real. I needed something to hold in my hands and say, no, you're not crazy. This happened. This is real. And then, I found something even more unexpected. A draft. Not sent. Sitting quietly in her email folder. Titled, Harland, if you ever find out. The first line read, I never wanted to hurt you, but I didn't know how to tell you I wasn't in love anymore. My stomach twisted. I read that sentence 10 times. Because it sounded so rehearsed. Like a script written months ago in preparation for the collapse she knew would come. A breakup that had already happened in her head while I was still planning anniversary surprises. She'd moved on emotionally long before she packed a single bag. So I sat there, breathing shallow, hands trembling slightly, and did the only thing I could still control. I drafted my reply. No swearing. No threats. No drama. Just one line. I read your draft. Glad you wrote it. You'll need it soon, but not for me. And I sent it. That night, I booked a one-way ticket. Where to? That's something you'll understand soon enough. Because while I was done chasing closure, I wasn't done taking back my life. I thought the worst part was over. Thought I'd seen the full picture, like some bleak movie with the credits already rolling. Turns out, I'd only watched the trailer. Because what happened next pulled the rug out from under me again. Only this time, it wasn't Kendra who did it. It was someone I never expected to hear from. Her best friend. Her name was Mallory. We'd known each other for years, but we were never close. She was loud, sharp-tongued, and always slightly judgmental in that brunch with mimosas kind of way. She called me too sensitive, once because I asked Kendra not to post something personal on Facebook. I always thought she secretly disliked me. So when my phone buzzed with her name, I nearly ignored it. But then I remembered something. Mallory knew everything. She always had. I answered. Hey. Her voice didn't sound like the Mallory I remembered. It was quiet. Cautious. She hesitated before she spoke, and when she did, the words hit like bricks. Harland, I need to tell you something. And I know I should have done it a long time ago. I didn't speak. I just let her continue. Kendra's been lying to you for way longer than you think. It wasn't just Dane. He's recent. But there was another guy before him. 2 years ago. A co-worker. And before that, someone she met on a retreat in Denver. I didn't want to get involved. But now she's saying you emotionally abandoned her. And that's just not true. I was there. I saw how much you tried. She's rewriting history, and I can't keep pretending it's fine. I leaned forward in the motel chair, my mouth dry. 2 years? 3 different men? She told you. I finally asked. She didn't need to, Mallory replied. She brags when she drinks. Says stuff like, Harland would never leave. He's too scared to start over. She laughs when people say you're loyal. Says you're predictable. Like that's a weakness. I felt a lump forming in my throat. That bitter, burning kind that comes when reality peels away another layer. I wasn't just betrayed. I was mocked. Ridiculed. I was the safe option, the placeholder, the man she could come home to after playing pretend in someone else's arms. Mallory said she was sorry, that she didn't say anything earlier because, in her words, I thought you knew. I thought maybe you were okay with it. That sentence right there? That broke something in me. Because how broken must I have seemed for someone to think I was okay with being used like that? I ended the call and stared out the motel window for a long time. It was raining. Not heavy, not dramatic. Just that soft drizzle that makes the world feel muted and slow. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I cried. Not because I missed her. Not because I wanted her back. I cried because I finally accepted the truth. This wasn't a marriage that slowly fell apart. It was a slow-motion demolition I kept standing inside of, thinking I could hold up the beams by myself. And while I sat in that chair, soaked in the weight of it all, something else happened. I got an email. From Kendra. Subject line. Let's meet. One last time. The message was short. If you've already decided to leave, I won't stop you. But I deserve the chance to explain. Just once. Face to face. I'll be home tomorrow. Please. I don't know why, but I stared at that message for what felt like an hour. Part of me wanted to ignore it, block her, vanish like smoke. But another part, the exhausted, battered part of me, wanted to look her in the eyes one final time and see if there was even a trace of guilt left in them. So I replied, okay, tomorrow, 11 a.m., but don't expect me to stay long. And that was it. I packed my things. I didn't sleep. I just waited. Not for answers, not for closure, just for the final page of a book I should have stopped reading years ago. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened when I walked back through that door. The walk up to our front door didn't feel real. It was like I was drifting through some twisted simulation where the house you spend a decade in becomes a stranger. I held the spare key in my hand for a full 30 seconds before I even put it in the lock. And when I turned it and heard the latch click, something in my chest felt like it clicked, too. Like the last gear grinding forward in a machine I no longer wanted to operate. She was already inside. I could tell the moment I stepped in. The scent of that overpriced candle she always lit when guests came over was burning, like this was just another polite dinner party. As if everything wasn't completely shattered between us. I closed the door behind me and said nothing. She stood near the kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug of tea she probably made for show. Hair curled. Soft makeup. Wearing that pale blue sweater she knew I used to like. The whole thing felt staged. Like she was trying to dress up for a job interview she already quit. Harland, she said, with a smile that looked more like a grimace. Thanks for coming. I looked at her. Not the way I used to. Not with hope or longing or even pain. I looked at her the way you look at a photograph of a place you used to live. Distant. Detached. Just a memory that doesn't feel like yours anymore. You said you wanted to talk. So talk. She looked caught off guard by my tone. Maybe she expected me to fold. Maybe she thought I'd walk in with my tail between my legs, begging for reasons or promising to forgive. But that version of me was gone. He left when she kissed Dane at our front door on a Friday afternoon while I was buying groceries. I just want to explain, she said. I know what I did was wrong. I know I should have said something sooner. But I was scared. Things between us, they haven't felt right for a while. You were pulling away. No, I cut in. I was shrinking. There's a difference. She blinked, caught mid-sip, unsure how to respond. I kept going. You talk about fear, Kendra, but what about me? Do you have any idea what it's like to lie next to someone every night and feel like you're dying in silence? To ask for connection and be told you're needy? To watch the person you love laugh harder with strangers than they ever did with you? I didn't mean to. You meant it, Kendra. Maybe not at first. But you chose this. Over and over. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The tears started forming, but I didn't believe them. Not anymore. Not after I saw the draft in her email. Not after Mallory confessed that this wasn't just Dane, that I'd been living in a ghost town while she was off building sandcastles with every new thrill that came along. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered. And for the first time, I let out a laugh. Not loud, not cruel, just tired. But you did, I said. You hurt me in every way that matters. And now you want me to sit here and what? Bless your mistakes? Wrap them in forgiveness and let you feel better about walking away from the wreckage you caused? She started crying. I'm sure it looked tragic. I'm sure it would have worked on someone else. But I'd seen the real Kendra. The version that rolled her eyes when I talked about my day. The version that called me emotionally fragile because I asked her why she stopped saying, "I love you." The version that mocked me behind my back and smirked when I left the room. "I know I've made mistakes," she said through tears, her voice cracking now. "But you were never there for me emotionally either. You acted like a victim before anything even happened." And there it was. The final attempt to reverse engineer my pain into guilt. To twist the blade one more time and make it my fault. I stood up slowly and reached into my bag. I pulled out a plain white envelope and placed it on the table. "What's this?" she asked, her voice small. "Copies of everything. The emails, the photos, my formal request to separate our finances, and a list of my things. I'll be back in 2 days to collect them. After that, you won't see me again." She looked down at the envelope like it was burning a hole through the table. "This is really it," she said. "You're just walking away?" "You walked away first," I said. "I'm just finally following." She didn't say anything, just stood there, frozen. The tears were still falling, but I didn't feel bad anymore. I didn't feel cruel. I felt free. I turned toward the door. But before I left, I paused and looked back at her one last time. And I said the only thing that still needed to be said. "You were right, Kendra. I was predictable, predictably loyal, predictably patient, predictably forgiving, but not anymore." And then I walked out. But what I found waiting outside, that was the final twist I never saw coming. I walked out of that house for the last time expecting nothing. No closure. No cinematic ending. Just air. Fresh, bitter, unfamiliar air. But life, as broken as it felt, had one last twist waiting for me. And for once, it wasn't meant to hurt. I reached the sidewalk and saw a car I didn't recognize parked near the curb. The window rolled down, and to my complete surprise, it was Colby. Yeah, the same Colby who first tipped me off with that photo from the rooftop bar. He gave me a nod like we were soldiers just getting off a battlefield. "You all right?" he asked. "No," I answered honestly, "but I think I will be." He told me he was just driving by to check if I was okay. Said he had a feeling she might try something to manipulate the narrative, and he didn't want me walking out into that alone. I didn't realize how much I needed that until he showed up. Just someone who got it. No lecture. No pity. Just presence. We ended up grabbing coffee. Not fancy, not deep. Just two tired guys sitting at a booth, talking about everything but her. The weather. Football. Whether or not oat milk is actually milk. It sounds ridiculous, but it grounded me. Like the world outside of Kendra still existed. Like I still existed. That night, I didn't go back to the motel. I went to a small cabin rental an hour outside the city. I'd booked it the night before, not really knowing why. Turns out, that little wooden box in the woods gave me something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. For 3 days, I didn't check my phone. I read a book, took a hike, wrote a list of everything I wanted to do. Not someday, but soon. I didn't cry. I didn't spiral. I healed, quietly, piece by piece. And then something wild happened. I started to smile again. Not because I found someone new. Not because I got revenge. But because, for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't stuck in someone else's version of my life. I was free. I was messy. I was me. And you know what? I like that guy. These days, I don't pretend like everything's perfect. Healing's weird. It doesn't come in clean lines. But I moved into a small place with windows that let the sun in. The real kind, not filtered through designer curtains. I joined a local writing group. I even adopted a dog. His name's Benny, and he snores louder than anyone I've ever met. Most importantly, I stopped asking, what did I do wrong? Instead, I ask, what do I want next? And that question, it saved me. Thanks for sticking with me through all 8 parts of this story. If you've ever walked away from something, or someone, that was breaking you in silence, I hope this reminded you that walking away is not weakness. Sometimes, it's the most courageous thing you'll ever do. Tell me in the comments, what moment in this story hit you the hardest? Have you ever had a wake-up call like mine? You've been watching Reddit Confessions, where the truth doesn't need to be pretty, it just needs to be real. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. And if you're healing right now, just know, you're not alone.